Princess Lyra sat in the observation room of the Galactic Council headquarters, staring at the holographic display that floated before her eyes. The symbols on the screen made no sense at first. Then her heart stopped. She recognized the patterns. It was impossible, but there they were. Human language transmissions coming from the edge of known space. Her hands trembled as she increased the signal strength. The static cleared slightly, and she heard fragments of words in a language that had been silent for 3,200 years. Humans. They were supposed to be extinct. Everyone in the galaxy believed that humanity had vanished during the Great Silence, an event where every human colony, ship, and station went dark at the same moment. No one knew why. No one knew how. They simply disappeared. Lyra was old even for her species. At 3,247 years, she had lived through the Great Silence. She had been there when humanity vanished, but when she tried to remember the details, her mind became foggy. There were gaps in her memory, like someone had carefully removed certain pages from a book. She rushed to the royal vaults beneath the council building. As chief historian, she had access to archives that most people would never see. Her footsteps echoed in the ancient corridors as she descended deeper into the underground chambers. The air grew cold and smelled of old paper and metal. In the deepest vault, she found what she was looking for: a sealed container marked with her own name. Inside were journals, her journals from 3,200 years ago. With shaking hands, she opened the first one. The pages were filled with her own handwriting, but the words felt foreign. She read about meetings, about research, about conversations with someone named Tai Hyun. The name appeared over and over. There were sketches, too. A man with dark hair and kind eyes. A human man. She had drawn him dozens of times from different angles in different settings. Sometimes he was smiling. Sometimes he looked serious. But in every picture there was something in his eyes that made her chest ache. Who was he? Why couldn't she remember him? Lyra spent hours reading through the journals. She learned that she had worked with this Tai Hyun on some kind of secret project. They had spent countless days together. The words she had written suggested something deeper than friendship, but the exact nature of their relationship remained unclear. The last entries were frantic, desperate. She had written about a choice, about duty, about sacrifice. And then nothing. The journals ended abruptly. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Her communication device was flashing. The Galactic Council had detected the human signals too. An emergency meeting had been called. She gathered the journals and one other item from the vault. A small metallic object she didn't recognize, but that her past self had apparently treasured. Then she hurried to the council chambers. The council room was in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species argued loudly. Some wanted to destroy the approaching human ships immediately. Others advocated for caution. Chancellor Vex, a tall reptilian being with cold yellow eyes, demanded military action. Humans were dangerous before they vanished, Vex said, his voice cutting through the noise. If they have returned, they are a threat. We must act now while they are still far away. We don't know why they left, another counselor argued. We don't know what they want. Lyra stood up. The room fell silent. Her position as both a princess and the chief historian gave her authority that few could challenge. We will not attack beings who have made no hostile moves, she said firmly. Her own words surprised her. Why did she feel so strongly about this? We will establish communication. We will learn why they disappeared and why they have returned. Only then can we make an informed decision. Vex glared at her. Your compassion will doom us all, princess. Your fear will make us into the monsters you imagine them to be, she replied. The council voted. It was close, but Lyra's faction won. They would attempt peaceful contact. Messages were sent into space, broadcasting on old human frequencies. Then they waited. 3 days later, a response came. A human ship was requesting permission to approach. They wanted to talk. They came in peace. Lyra barely slept in the days that followed. She kept reading her old journals, trying to unlock the memories that seemed just beyond reach. She examined the metallic object from the vault. It was warm to the touch, almost like it was alive. When she held it, she felt strange sensations, flashes of images that vanished before she could focus on them. One night, alone in her chambers, she pressed the object against her forehead. The world exploded into light. She saw a memory, brief but vivid. She stood on a balcony overlooking a city. Beside her was the man from the drawings, Tae-hyun. They were watching stars together. He was pointing at constellations, telling her something important. She felt happy. She felt safe. She felt loved. Then the memory vanished, leaving her gasping on the floor. What had happened to her? Why were her memories sealed? And why did thinking about this human man make her feel like her heart was breaking? The human delegation arrived on schedule. Lyra stood with the other council members as the shuttle landed. The door opened and 3 humans emerged. They wore uniforms she had never seen before, but there was something familiar about the way they carried themselves. The leader was a man in a military uniform. He had captain's insignia on his collar. His face was strong and serious. Behind him was a woman with diplomatic robes, an ambassador clearly. The third was another military officer. "I am Captain Dae-won," the man said, bowing respectfully. "This is Ambassador Ha-rin. We come representing humanity. We have returned home." When Lyra looked at Captain Dae-won, something stirred in her chest. He looked nothing like the man from her visions, Tae-hyun. But there was something about his eyes, the way he stood, that felt achingly familiar. She opened her mouth to speak, to welcome them, but the words caught in her throat. Because in that moment she knew with absolute certainty that she had done this before. She had welcomed humans before. She had stood in this exact position, feeling this exact mixture of hope and dread. History was repeating itself. But why couldn't she remember the first time? Ambassador Ha-rin stepped forward. "We know our disappearance was unexpected. We have much to explain. But first we must tell you the reason we left is returning, and this time we are here to help you face it." The council chamber erupted in questions, but Lyra stood frozen, staring at the humans, her hand unconsciously touching the strange metallic object in her pocket. It was warm. It was pulsing, and somewhere deep in her sealed memories something was beginning to wake up. The council chamber felt smaller than usual. Captain Dae-won stood at the center, projecting holographic images that showed humanity's journey. Lyra watched from her seat, trying to focus on his words while her mind kept drifting to memories that weren't quite there. "We didn't vanish," Dae-won explained. "We retreated. 3,200 years ago, our scientists detected something approaching our dimension, a cascade of energy that would have destroyed everything in its path. We had only one option, to leave." Ambassador Ha-rin continued the explanation. "Our greatest minds worked together to create a pocket dimension, a place outside normal space where we could survive. We took our entire species there. Ships, stations, colonies. Everything went dark because everything left this reality. Why didn't you warn us?" Chancellor Vex demanded. "Why didn't you help the rest of the galaxy escape?" "The dimensional fold was experimental," Dae-won said quietly. "We barely had enough power to save ourselves. The cascade was coming too fast. We had hours, not days." Lyra felt dizzy. She gripped the armrest of her chair. The pocket dimension. The cascade. These words meant something to her. She had heard them before. That night she returned to her private chambers and opened the journals again. She read more carefully this time, paying attention to technical terms. There it was. Tae-hyun had been working on something called the Exodus Project. He had been trying to save humanity. She flipped through pages until she found an entry that made her blood run cold. "Tae-hyun told me today that they're leaving. All of them. In 3 days, humanity will step outside of reality itself. He asked me to come with him. He said there might be a way to take me too. But I can't. My people need me. My father, the Emperor, is dying. I have responsibilities." Lyra's hands shook as she read her own words from thousands of years ago. Tae-hyun held my hand and said he understood. But I saw the pain in his eyes. "We both know this is goodbye. Forever." The next entry was worse. "I can't do this. I can't watch him leave. I can't live 3,000 years knowing he's gone. Tae-hyun has offered me a mercy, a memory seal, ancient Velian technology that can lock away specific memories. He said if I can't remember, I won't feel the pain." I agreed. "After tomorrow, I won't remember him at all. It's better this way." Lyra closed the journal. Her vision was blurry. She was crying, though she didn't know exactly why. She had loved someone. She had loved a human. And she had chosen to forget him rather than live with the loss. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. She wiped her eyes quickly. "Enter." Captain Dae-won stepped inside. He looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure he should be there. Princess Lyra, I apologize for the intrusion. Ambassador Haran said you might have questions that are better discussed in private. Sit, Lyra said. She studied his face. You remind me of someone. Daewon nodded slowly. I know. My ancestor was Taehyun Lee. He was a scientist who worked on the Exodus project. He left detailed records about this place. About you. The room seemed to tilt. He remembered me? He never forgot you, Daewon said. His journals, his research notes, your name appears in all of them. Every generation of my family has been told the story. About the Velian princess who helped save humanity. About the sacrifice she made. What sacrifice? Lyra whispered. You gave up your memories. Taehyun wrote that you couldn't bear the thought of living millennia with the pain of losing him. So you used your people's technology to seal those memories away. He respected your choice even though it broke his heart. Lyra stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city lights sparkled in the darkness. Why did the seal break? Why am I remembering now? Because we came back, Daewon said. Taehyun designed the seal to unlock when humanity returned. He wanted you to remember then, not before. He said. Daewon paused, pulling out a small data device. He left you a message. I was instructed to give this to you when the time was right. Lyra took the device with trembling hands. A message? From 3,000 years ago? From the man who loved you enough to let you forget him? After Daewon left, Lyra sat in the darkness for a long time, holding the device. Finally, she activated it. A hologram appeared. And there he was, Taehyun, the man from her drawings. He looked young, maybe 30 years old. His eyes were red like he had been crying. Lyra, the hologram said, if you're seeing this, then we made it. Humanity survived. We came back. And your memories have returned. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. I want you to know that I don't regret anything. The time we spent together was the happiest period of my life. You made me believe that different species, different worlds could truly understand each other. The hologram Taehyun looked down, gathering his thoughts. I sealed your memories because I love you. I couldn't bear the thought of you spending thousands of years in pain. But I couldn't seal mine. I will carry you with me into the fold, into whatever comes next. Every day I will remember. Every day I will work to bring humanity home. Not just for our species, but for you, because I promised I would return. Tears streamed down Lyra's face. The hologram continued. I need to tell you something important. I have a younger brother, Jiwoo. He's in the military. If something happens to me during the Exodus, he will carry on the family line. I've made him promise that every generation will know your name, that every generation will remember the promise we made to return. Taehyun reached out his hand as if he could touch her across time. Live, Lyra, live fully. Don't let my memory chain you to the past. When humanity returns, it should be a new beginning. Meet my descendants with hope, not sorrow. They will honor you as I honor you, with respect, with gratitude, and with love. The hologram began to fade. Goodbye, my princess. Thank you for everything, and if you can, forgive me for leaving. Then he was gone. Lyra sat in the empty room holding the device. Memories were flooding back now, faster and faster. She remembered late nights in the laboratory, working on equations that would tear holes in reality. She remembered walking through gardens, talking about philosophy and science. She remembered the last day, standing in the hangar, watching Taehyun board the final ship. She remembered his last words. Someone will return. I promise. He had kept that promise. Not him, but his bloodline. His descendants had come back. The next morning, Lyra returned to the council chambers with new purpose. The humans were presenting more information about their time in the pocket dimension. Ambassador Haran was explaining how humanity had evolved. Time moved differently there, Haran said. What was 3,000 years for you was much less for us. But we didn't waste it. We advanced our technology. We extended our lifespans. We prepared for the day we could return. And the cascade? Someone asked. The threat you fled from? Haran's expression grew serious. It's still coming. That's why we're here. The cascade is a wave of destruction that moves through dimensions. It's slow, but it's inevitable. We had to wait until it passed our original location before we could return. Then we're safe, Chancellor Vex said. No, Captain Daewon said. The cascade doesn't move in a straight line. It's circling back. We estimate it will reach this sector within 5 years. But this time we're prepared. This time we can fight it. The council erupted in panic. Lyra raised her hand for silence. What do you need from us? Alliance, Daewon said simply. We need the Galactic Council to work with us. We have the weapons, the shields, the knowledge, but we can't protect every world alone. We need unity. Lyra looked at the human captain. At Taehyun's descendant. At the fulfillment of a promise made 3,000 years ago. You have my support, she said. Humanity came back to save us just as we once tried to save you. The Velian Empire will stand with you. Other counselors began to agree. Not all of them. Chancellor Vex and his faction remained suspicious. But enough voted yes. The alliance was formed. That evening, Lyra stood on her balcony, the same one from her memory. Captain Daewon found her there. Ambassador Harin said you wanted to see me. I wanted to thank you, Lyra said. And to tell you that I remember everything now. Daewon stood beside her looking at the stars. It's a heavy burden remembering someone you can never see again. Yes, Lyra agreed. But it's also a gift. Taehyun gave me 3,000 years free from pain. Now he's given me the memories back. Both were acts of love. He never stopped loving you, Daewon said quietly. The journals say so. He never took a partner. Never bonded with anyone else. He spent his whole life working to bring humanity back. For you. Lyra felt tears again, but this time they weren't entirely sad. Then we'll honor him. We'll save this galaxy, together. 3 weeks passed since humanity's return. The Galactic Council worked day and night with human scientists, preparing defenses against the approaching cascade. Lyra threw herself into the work, organizing resources, coordinating between species, and studying ancient Velian texts that might contain useful information. But at night, alone in her chambers, she continued exploring her returned memories. Each day brought new fragments, moments with Taehyun that she had forgotten. A joke he had made, a theory he had proposed, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. Ambassador Harin visited her office one morning carrying a secure container. The diplomat's face was serious. Princess Lyra, I have something for you. Captain Daewon wanted to give you this personally, but he's been called to the Outer Rim. There's been an incident. What kind of incident? Lyra asked, concerned. A small cascade probe. Nothing dangerous yet, but it confirms our timeline. We have less than 5 years. Harin placed the container on the desk. Before he left, Daewon asked me to deliver this. It's from the human archives. A personal file that's been passed down through his family. Lyra's hands hesitated over the container. What is it? Taehyun Lee's final recordings. Not the message he left for you in the seal. That was just the beginning. He recorded hundreds of hours of content. Messages, journals, thoughts. All of it meant for you for when humanity returned. Harin stood to leave. Take your time with it. And Princess? Daewon wanted me to tell you something. He said, tell her that I'm not my ancestor. I'm just the messenger. After Harin left, Lyra opened the container. Inside were dozens of data chips, each labeled with dates from 3,000 years ago. She picked the first one, dated 2 days after the Exodus. With a deep breath, she activated it. Taehyun appeared as a hologram. He looked exhausted. Behind him, she could see the inside of a ship, the Pocket Dimension transport. Day 1 of the Exodus. We made it. The fold is stable. Humanity is safe. He paused, rubbing his eyes. I should be celebrating, but all I can think about is her. Lyra stayed behind. She chose duty over love, and I respect that, I do. But it doesn't make this easier. Lyra watched recording after recording. Taehyun talked about the early days in the Pocket Dimension, the challenges of building a new civilization in a space that didn't follow normal physics, the strange beauty of a dimension where stars didn't exist but energy flowed like water. One recording, dated about a year after the Exodus, showed Taehyun in what looked like a laboratory. I've been working on the dimensional anchors, he said. If we're ever going to return, we need to understand how to stabilize rifts. But every equation I write, every calculation I make, I think about the work Lyra and I did together. She had insights that no human scientist had. She saw patterns we missed. He smiled sadly. I wonder if she remembers any of it. Probably not. The seal should have taken effect by now. Another recording showed him much older, maybe 50 years old by appearance. My brother Jiwoo had a son today. They named him Daewon after our grandfather. I held the baby and told him about a princess from another species who saved our entire civilization. He didn't understand, of course. He just grabbed my finger and laughed. Taehyun's voice cracked. I made Jiwoo promise that every generation will know Lyra's name, that every generation will carry the mission to return. It's not just about humanity anymore. It's about keeping a promise. Lyra had to pause the recordings. She was crying too hard to see. The metallic object that she now knew was called a memory seal sat on her desk. It was no longer glowing. Its purpose had been fulfilled. She continued through the recordings. Tae-hyun aged in the holograms, 60, 70, 80 years old. His hair turned white. His face gained lines, but his eyes remained the same, kind and determined. One recording from his later years showed him sitting in a garden. I'm an old man now. My brother passed last year. His grandson is continuing the dimensional anchor research. Every generation gets closer to solving the return problem. He looked directly at the camera as if he could see Lyra across time. I need to tell you something, Lyra. Something I couldn't say in the sealed message. I never bonded with anyone else. People asked why. My brother begged me to find happiness, but how could I? I spent my life with you. Real you, not a memory or a dream. The actual you. Brilliant, compassionate, strong. How does someone move on from that? Tae-hyun leaned forward. I don't regret the seal. You needed to be free from pain, but I carried enough love for both of us. Every day of my life I worked toward one goal, bringing humanity back to you. Not to possess you, not to claim you, just to fulfill the promise. To let you know that you mattered, that our time together meant something. The last recording was dated just days before Tae-hyun's death, according to the file information. He looked very old now, but his mind was clearly still sharp. This is my final message. The doctors say I don't have long. That's all right. I've lived a full life. I've seen humanity survive the impossible. I've seen my family line continue strong. He coughed, then continued. I want you to know about my descendants. I've prepared genetic markers, family trees, everything. Day one, my great-great-grandson is a military officer. He's brilliant. He has my stubbornness and his grandmother's tactical mind. When humanity returns, he'll be among the first to volunteer. Tae-hyun reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. He held it up to the camera. It was a ring, a simple band of metal that Lyra recognized. She had given it to him as a good luck charm before the Exodus. I've worn this every day since you gave it to me. It will be buried with me as I've requested, but I've had a replica made. Daewon will carry it. When you meet him, you'll know. You'll know that my family kept the faith. The old scientist's eyes were wet. Goodbye, my princess.
My love, my friend.
Thank you for 3 months of happiness that sustained me for a lifetime. Live well, love again if you can. Don't let my memory be a chain. Let it be a bridge. From the past we shared to the future you'll build. The recording ended. Lyra sat in silence for a long time. Then she noticed something she had missed. There was one more data chip. The label read, Genetic Signature Verification Protocol. She loaded it. Technical data filled her screen. DNA sequences, family trees, hereditary markers. And then she understood. Tae-hyun had left her a way to verify his descendants. To know without doubt who carried his bloodline, her computer chimed. A message from the military command. Captain Daewon was returning from the Outer Rim. His ship would dock in 2 hours. Lyra pulled up the genetic signature file and cross-referenced it with the Galactic Council's entry records. Every visitor to the Council headquarters had their biology scanned for security purposes. She accessed Captain Daewon's file. The match was perfect. Every marker aligned. Daewon was Tae-hyun's direct descendant, but there was something else in the genetic data. Something that made Lyra's hands shake. The file showed an anomaly in Daewon's aging markers. Humans from the pocket dimension had different biological ages than their chronological ages. The strange physics had affected them. According to the data, Daewon was chronologically 143 years old, but biologically he appeared to be only 35. The pocket dimension had slowed human aging dramatically. Lyra did quick calculations. When did the Exodus happen? 3,200 years ago in normal space. But time moved differently in the fold. For humans there, only about 400 years had passed, which meant she pulled up more files, searching desperately. She found records of all the humans who had emerged from the pocket dimension. She searched for Tae-hyun Lee. There. The name appeared on a list marked Long-Term Dimensional Exposure, Special Cases. Her hands trembled as she opened the file. The words swam before her eyes. Tae-hyun Lee. Age 3.2, 47 years chronological. Biological age unable to determine. Subject has been exposed to pocket dimension energies for entire subjective timeline of 400 years. Aging has effectively stopped. Subject remains in dimensional research facility. Health status stable. Lyra stood so quickly that her chair fell over. Tae-hyun was alive. He had never died. The recording about his final days, it had been about his plan to stop aging research, not his death. He was alive, and he was still in the pocket dimension. She ran from her office, ignoring the surprised looks from staff members. She had to find Captain Daewon. She had to know the truth. The hangar bay was busy with ships coming and going. She spotted Daewon's vessel landing. The moment the doors opened, she was there. Daewon stepped out and immediately saw her expression. "Princess Lyra? What's wrong?" "He's alive," she said, breathless. "Tae-hyun. He's alive, isn't he?" Daewon's face became carefully neutral. "We need to talk. In private." They went to a secure room. Daewon sealed the door and activated privacy shields. Then he turned to her. "Yes, Tae-hyun is alive. The pocket dimension physics prevented aging for those who spent their entire lives there. He's in the dimensional research station, maintaining the fold pathway." "Why didn't you tell me?" Lyra demanded. "Because he asked us not to," Daewon said. "He's the one who sent me. He's the one who gave me the recordings. He wanted you to understand the sacrifice he made, the life he lived before you knew he still existed." "I don't understand." Daewon pulled out a chair for her. "Tae-hyun can't come back to normal space. The dimensional the secure communication chamber was cold." Lyra stood before a massive holographic projector, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone in the room must hear it. Captain Daewon operated the controls while Ambassador Hayron stood quietly in the corner. They had given her space, understanding that this moment belonged to her alone. "The connection is establishing," Daewon said softly. "The pocket dimension has communication delays. There might be a few seconds of lag." Lyra nodded, unable to speak. 3,000 years. He had waited 3,000 years, and she had forgotten him for almost all of that time. The hologram flickered to life, and there he was. Tae-hyun looked exactly as she remembered from her returned memories. Maybe a bit older, fine lines around his eyes, a touch of silver in his dark hair. But those eyes, those kind eyes that had watched stars with her, they were the same. He wore simple research clothes. Behind him she could see equipment that looked both human and impossibly alien. "Lyra," he said. His voice cracked on her name. "You remember?" "I remember everything," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me you were alive?" "Because I needed you to understand the journey first. The sacrifice. The reasons." He smiled, that sad smile she remembered. "If you had known immediately that I was alive, you would have rushed to find me without understanding why I stayed behind. You've been alone for 400 years. I've been purposeful for 400 years. He corrected gently. "I maintained the fold pathway. I researched the cascade. I found solutions. And I waited for the right time to bring humanity home. I wasn't alone, Lyra. I had a purpose. I had hope. And I had memories of you." Tears streamed down her face. "I forgot you. I forgot everything." At my suggestion, Tae-hyun reminded her. "I wanted you to live free from pain." Did you live well?" Lyra thought about the centuries that had passed. She had served her people, advanced as a historian, made discoveries, helped shape galactic policy. She had friends. She had purpose. But had she been truly happy? "I lived," she said finally. "But there was always something missing. An emptiness I couldn't name." "I'm sorry," Tae-hyun said, "but I'm also grateful. Because it means the seal worked. You didn't spend thousands of years in grief. And you spent thousands of years alone. Not alone. Never alone." He touched his chest. "You were here. Every day." Before Lyra could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Daewon's communication device erupted with urgent messages. He listened for a moment, his face going pale. "We have to go. The cascade probe we detected, it wasn't a probe. It was a scout. The main wave is coming early." The hologram of Tae-hyun leaned forward. "How early?" "Days," Daewon said. "Not years, days." Tae-hyun's expression shifted from tender to tactical in seconds. "Then we're out of time. Lyra, I need you to listen carefully. The solution we found, we need to implement it now. But it requires your help." "Anything," Lyra said. "The cascade isn't just energy. It's entities. Living things from a collapsing dimension. They're refugees fleeing their dying reality, but they're incompatible with our space. Where they exist, our reality tears apart. Lyra processed this quickly. So we're not fighting a natural disaster. We're fighting survivors who are trying to save themselves. Yes, and we can't just kill them. They're sentient. But we also can't let them destroy our dimension. Taehyun pulled up holographic displays. I've been working on a third option, a new pocket dimension, a sanctuary where they can exist without harming us. But creating it requires massive energy and 2 anchor points, one from our dimension and one from theirs. I'll do it, Lyra said immediately. What do you need? We'll talk about the details later. Right now, you need to prepare the defenses. The Cascade entities will arrive before we can build the sanctuary. We have to survive first. The next 3 days were chaos. The Galactic Council mobilized every military force. Human ships took positions throughout the sector, their advanced weapons ready. Lyra worked with Colonel Jae-hee, a human military strategist, to coordinate defenses. Jae-hee was efficient and brilliant. She had a tactical mind that could see patterns others missed. The entities will target population centers first, she explained, pointing at star maps. They're drawn to life energy. We need to evacuate civilians and concentrate our forces here, here, and here. Dr. Bo-Ra, a human scientist who specialized in dimensional physics, worked alongside Lyra in the research labs. Bo-Ra was descended from Taehyun's original research team, and she had inherited their genius. The defensive shields we've developed should hold against the first wave, Bo-Ra explained. But they'll adapt. These entities learn. Each attack will be different. How much time do we have? Lyra asked. Maybe 20 hours? Maybe less. Lyra barely slept. When she did close her eyes, she saw Taehyun's face in the hologram. She thought about his words. 400 years of waiting. 400 years of purpose and hope. And now, when they finally had a chance to be together, the universe was ending. The attacks began at dawn. The sky above the capital city split open. Reality itself seemed to tear, and through the rifts came things that shouldn't exist. They looked like shadows given form, with too many angles and colors that hurt to see. They moved through space in ways that defied physics, appearing in multiple places at once. Human weapons fired. Energy beams that could shatter planets struck the entities. Some fell. Others absorbed the energy and grew stronger. The defensive shields held, but barely. Lyra stood in the command center, coordinating evacuations and military responses. Daewon's voice came through the communication system. He was leading a fighter squadron, engaging the entities directly. They're adapting to our weapons faster than predicted, he reported. We need the secondary defensive grid online now. Working on it, Colonel Jae-hee responded. Her fingers flew over controls. All ships switched to pattern Delta 7. Use the pulse weapons, not the beam cannons. The battle raged for hours. More rifts opened. More entities poured through. The galaxy was fighting for its survival, and they were losing ground. In the midst of the chaos, Lyra's personal communication device activated. Taehyun's voice came through. Lyra, we need to talk. About the sanctuary plan, can it wait? She asked, watching screens that showed ships exploding, stations falling. No, because you need to understand what it will cost. Lyra stepped into a side room, away from the noise of the command center. Tell me, creating the sanctuary requires 2 anchor points, someone from our dimension and someone from theirs. The anchors have to be permanent, living bridges that maintain the dimensional boundary forever. Forever, the people who become anchors will exist in a state between dimensions. Not physical, not energy, something else. They'll be conscious, aware, but they won't be able to interact with either reality normally. They'll be isolated, alone. Lyra understood immediately. You want to be one of the anchors. I'm already halfway there, Taehyun said. 400 years in the pocket dimension have changed me. I can't come back to normal space. This is the only way I can still help. Still matter. And the other anchor? Someone has to join you? Yes. Someone from our dimension who's compatible with the process. The calculations suggest that Velian biology is the most suitable. Specifically, someone who's already been exposed to dimensional energies. He paused. Someone who wore a memory seal for 3,000 years. The implication hit her like a physical blow. Me, you need me to be the other anchor. I need someone. It doesn't have to be you. Dr. Bo-Ra thinks there might be other candidates, but yes, you're the most compatible. And there's another factor. Taehyun's voice was gentle. If we do this, we'll be connected. The anchors aren't completely isolated from each other. We'd be together in a way. Not physical but present, aware of each other. Together but not together, conscious but not alive. Existing to save two dimensions, giving up everything so that others can live. Lyra thought about her life, 3,000 years of it. She had served her people. She had done good work. But what did she have that was truly hers? Taehyun had spent 400 years alone maintaining the fold pathway. Could she do less? There has to be another way, she said finally. If there is, we haven't found it, and we're out of time. An explosion rocked the building. Alarms blared. Jaehee's voice came over the speakers. Princess Lyra, we need you back in command. The eastern defensive grid is failing. I'll think about it, Lyra told Taehyun. But right now I have to help save what we can. Of course, but Lyra, whatever you decide, I want you to know. I don't regret anything. Not the wait. Not the sacrifice. Because it brought us to this moment, and if this is all we get, it's enough. The communication ended. Lyra returned to the command center, her mind spinning. Outside, the sky was full of impossible things trying to tear reality apart. Inside, she had a choice to make. Live and watch dimensions collapse, or sacrifice everything to become something new. Something that might save everyone. She looked at the screens showing Captain Daewon's ship fighting in the void. He was Taehyun's descendant. He represented hope, future, the continuation of a promise. If she became an anchor, she would never speak to him again. Never guide her people, never walk under real stars, but she would be with Taehyun, in some way. After 3, the medical bay smelled of antiseptic and fear. Captain Daewon lay on a biobed, his body covered in burns from a direct hit his ship had taken during the battle. The medical staff said he would survive, but recovery would take weeks. Weeks they might not have. Lyra sat beside him watching the monitors track his vital signs. She had spent hours here over the past 2 days, sometimes talking to him when he was conscious, sometimes just sitting in silence when he slept. The fighting continued outside. More rifts opened daily. More entities poured through. The defensive grids were holding, barely. Human technology was buying them time, but everyone knew time was running out. Daewon's eyes opened. He turned his head slowly to look at her. You should be commanding the defense, not babysitting me. Colonel Jaehee has command, Lyra said. She doesn't need me hovering. And I needed to think. This seemed like a quiet place. Quiet, Daewon repeated with a weak laugh. While the galaxy burns outside. While the galaxy fights, Lyra corrected. There's a difference. Daewon tried to sit up, winced, and settled back down. You've been talking to Taehyun about the sanctuary plan. I can see it in your face, and how did you know? Because you have the same expression he did in his recordings when he was deciding to stay behind in the pocket dimension. That look that says you're weighing your entire existence against the lives of others. Lyra was quiet for a moment. He wants me to be the second anchor, to help create the sanctuary dimension, and you don't want to. I don't want to give up everything, my life, my people, physical existence itself. Is that selfish? Daewon reached out and took her hand. His grip was weak but warm. It's human. Well, Velian, but the sentiment is the same. No one wants to stop existing. But if I don't, everyone else will stop existing anyway. Maybe. Or maybe Dr. Bora will find another solution. She's brilliant. Give her time. We don't have time, Lyra said. You know we don't. They sat in silence. Medical equipment beeped steadily. Outside the window, they could see ships moving in formation, preparing for the next attack. Can I tell you something? Daewon asked. Something I've never told anyone? Of course. Growing up as Taehyun's descendant was hard. Everyone expected me to be like him. Brilliant scientist, fearless leader. Willing to sacrifice everything. My parents, my teachers, my commanding officers, they all looked at me and saw his shadow. No matter what I achieved, it was never quite enough because he had done the impossible. Lyra squeezed his hand. That must have been difficult, it was. But it also taught me something important. I'm not Taehyun. I can't be. I'm Daewon. I have my own strengths, my own weaknesses, my own path. And that's okay. He met her eyes. You don't have to be his final sacrifice. You don't have to complete his story. You can choose your own path. But what if my path leads to the same place his did? What if sacrifice is the only answer? Then at least it would be your choice, not his legacy forcing your hand. Before Lyra could respond, Dr. Bora burst into the medical bay. The scientist looked exhausted, her clothes wrinkled, her hair a mess. But her eyes were bright with excitement. Princess Lyra, I found something. In the ancient Velian records you helped me access. There might be another way. They moved to a nearby conference room. Bora pulled up holographic displays showing complex equations and ancient Velian text. The sanctuary plan requires 2 permanent anchors, yes. But what if they weren't permanent? What if we could create temporary anchors that rotate? Explain, Lyra said. Velian consciousness technology allows for quantum entanglement between minds. The memory seal you used was based on this technology. What if we use that same principle to create a rotation system? Multiple volunteers take turns being anchors. Each person serves for a set period, then switches with someone else. Would that work? Lyra asked, hope rising in her chest. In theory. But there's a problem. Bora's expression fell. The initial creation of the sanctuary still requires 2 permanent anchors to establish the dimensional boundaries. Once it's stable, we could implement the rotation. But someone has to go first. Someone has to be the foundation. Hope died as quickly as it had risen, so we're back to the original problem. Not exactly, Bora said. Because once the sanctuary is established and stable, the original anchors could potentially be relieved. Brought back in a way. It would take years, maybe decades, but it's possible. How long? Day-One asked. He had insisted on coming to the meeting despite his injuries. Minimum of 50 years, maybe more. The dimensional energies need time to stabilize. 50 years. Lyra tried to comprehend it. 50 years of existing as something other than herself. 50 years of consciousness without physical form. 50 years of being isolated from everything she knew. But not forever. Not the eternal sacrifice Tae-Hyun had offered. A long darkness, but with light at the end. What would I be during those 50 years? Lyra asked, aware but not present. You'd exist in a state between dimensions, maintaining the boundary. You'd be conscious, able to think, but unable to interact with our reality. Time would feel different there. What's 50 years for us might feel much shorter to you, or much longer. We don't know. And Tae-Hyun, he would be with you. The 2 anchors are connected, linked at the quantum level. You'd be aware of each other, in some ways closer than any physical relationship could be. Lyra stood and walked to the window. Outside, another explosion lit up the sky. How many had died today? How many would die tomorrow? There's something else you should know, Bora continued. The entities, the ones trying to break through, they're not mindless. They're afraid. Their dimension is collapsing. They're trying to survive. If we create the sanctuary, we're not destroying them. We're giving them a home, a place where they can exist without harming us. So this isn't just about saving our dimension, it's about saving theirs too. Yes, the sanctuary would house millions of beings, 2 entire realities existing side by side, separated by a boundary that 2 people maintain. Daewon spoke up. What about the rotation? Who would volunteer to take over after the first 50 years? I would, Bora said immediately. After seeing what this crisis has done, how close we came to extinction, I'd volunteer. And I know others would too. Once people understand that the anchors can be relieved, that it's not a permanent death sentence, volunteers will come forward. Would they? Lyra asked. Would they really sacrifice decades of their lives? Yes, Daewon said firmly. Because you and Taehyun would show them it's possible. You'd be proof that sacrifice isn't the end, that there's hope. Lyra turned back to face them. I need to talk to Taehyun alone. They arranged a private communication channel. Lyra sat in a sealed room, waiting for the connection to establish. When Taehyun's hologram appeared, she saw that he looked more tired than before. The battle was taking its toll on everyone, even those in other dimensions. Bora found a modification to the plan, Lyra said without preamble. The anchors might not be permanent. Taehyun listened as she explained. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. 50 years minimum. Yes, that's still a long time. Less than 400, Lyra pointed out. Less than you've already spent waiting. True, he smiled. Are you trying to talk me into this or yourself? Both, maybe. I don't know. Lyra leaned forward. Taehyun, I have to ask you something. Your recordings, your messages, they all talked about sacrifice and duty. But what do you actually want? Not what you think you should do. What do you want? Taehyun was quiet. Then slowly he said, I want to be with you. Not as a hologram or a memory. Not across dimensions or time. I want to stand beside you and watch stars. I want to have conversations that don't involve saving the galaxy. I want normal. I want simple. His voice broke. I want what we had for those 3 months before the Exodus. I want that back. So do I, Lyra whispered. More than anything, but we can't have it, not now. But in 50 years, maybe we can. 50 years is a long time to wait for a maybe. You waited 3,000 years for an impossible. 50 years for a maybe seems better. Taehyun laughed, really laughed for the first time since they had reconnected. When did you become such an optimist? When I remembered that I loved someone foolish enough to wait millennia for a promise. They talked through the night, making plans, discussing details, facing fears. By dawn, they had made their decision. Lyra called a meeting with the Galactic Council leadership. Ambassador Harin was there, along with Colonel Jae-hee, Dr. Bo-ra, and Captain Daewon, who insisted on attending despite his injuries. Chancellor Vex and the other counselors assembled. We have a solution to the Cascade crisis, Lyra announced, but it requires volunteers. 2 people to serve as dimensional anchors for a minimum of 50 years. After that time, they can potentially be relieved by others who volunteer to take their place. She explained the plan in detail. When she finished, Chancellor Vex spoke up. And who would be foolish enough to volunteer for such a thing? I would, Lyra said. And Taehyun Lee has agreed to be the second anchor. The room erupted in arguments. Some counselors protested, saying the Velian Empire couldn't afford to lose their princess. Others questioned whether humans could be trusted with such responsibility. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Ambassador Harin stood. The princess has made her choice, as has Taehyun Lee. Both are adult. The war room was packed with military leaders from every species in the Galactic Council. Holographic displays showed the positions of thousands of ships, defensive grids, and the growing number of cascade rifts. The entities were pushing harder now, as if they sensed that time was running out. Colonel Jae-hee stood at the center coordinating the massive defense effort. Her tactical displays showed attack patterns, predicted rift locations, and fleet movements. The sanctuary generators are almost ready, she announced. We need to hold the line for 18 more hours. That's all. 18 hours and we can deploy. 18 hours might as well be 18 years, Chancellor Vex muttered. We're losing ground every minute. He was right. Despite humanity's advanced weapons and the combined might of the Galactic Council, the entities were adapting faster than predicted. Each wave was stronger, smarter, more coordinated than the last. Captain Daewon, still recovering but refusing to stay in medical, studied the tactical displays. Despite his injuries, he had been given command of the combined fleet at Ambassador Harin's recommendation. No one else had experience fighting dimensional entities. They're not just adapting to our weapons, he said. They're learning our tactics. See this pattern? They're deliberately targeting our communication arrays. They want to separate our forces. Then we adjust, Commander Sang-woo said. He was a fighter pilot who had distinguished himself in the earliest battles. We tighten formations, use short-range communications only. That leaves us vulnerable to concentrated attacks, Admiral Hyunjin pointed out. The fleet coordinator had been working without sleep for days, her eyes red with exhaustion. If they realize we've clustered our ships, they could take out entire squadrons at once. It's a risk we have to take, Daewon decided. Pass the order. All ships form tight defensive spheres around population centers. Sacrifice mobility for communication security. As the orders went out, Dr. Bo-ra entered the war room. She looked even worse than Admiral Hyunjin, if that was possible. The sanctuary, generators are ready ahead of schedule, she announced. We can deploy in 12 hours instead of 18. A cheer went up from the assembled officers. 12 hours. They just had to survive 12 more hours. There's a complication, Bo-ra continued, and the cheering stopped. To activate the generators, we need to place them inside an active cascade rift, close enough to the entity's dimension that the anchors can connect to both realities simultaneously. That means sending a ship into a rift, Daewon said. Into the cascade itself. Yes, and it's a one-way trip. The ship that carries the generators won't be able to return. The pilot and anyone else aboard will be trapped in the transition zone until the anchors stabilize the sanctuary. That could take hours. Hours surrounded by entities that can tear reality apart, Sang-woo said quietly. The ship will need heavy shielding, Admiral Hyun-jin said, and the best pilot we have. Every eye in the room turned to Commander Sang-woo. He was the finest pilot in the fleet, human or otherwise. If anyone could navigate inside a cascade rift, it was him. Sang-woo straightened. I'll do it. You don't have to volunteer, Daewon said. Yes, I do. This is what I trained for. This is what my family, all our families, came back to this dimension to accomplish. Sang-woo smiled grimly. Besides, someone needs to make sure the generators are placed correctly. Bora, you're coming with me. What? The scientist looked shocked. You know the generators better than anyone. If something goes wrong during deployment, you're the only one who can fix it. So yes, you're coming. Bora swallowed hard, then nodded. Okay. I'll go. I should be the one going, Daewon said. I'm the fleet commander. It's my responsibility. You're injured, Sang-woo pointed out. And someone needs to coordinate the defense while we're gone. That's you, Captain. Before Daewon could argue further, alarms screamed throughout the facility. A massive rift was opening directly above the capital city, bigger than any they had seen before. Through it poured thousands of entities, more than had appeared in all previous attacks combined. All ships engage, Daewon ordered. Defensive grid to maximum power. Evacuate all civilians to underground shelters. Move. The room exploded into action. Officers shouted orders. Ships scrambled to intercept the entities. Energy weapons lit up the sky. Lyra had been standing quietly in the corner, observing. She was supposed to begin the anchor transformation process in just a few hours. But watching the battle unfold, she realized she couldn't just wait. What can I do to help? Jae-hee pulled up a different display. The ancient Velian defense grid, the one from your civilization's early days. Dr. Bora believes it might be compatible with our modern shields, but it requires Velian biological authorization to activate. Can you do it? Where? The old Imperial Palace, about 20 kilometers from here. The control systems are in the basement archives. I'll go. Lyra headed for the door. Princess, it's too dangerous, Vex protested. The entities are everywhere. Then I'll move fast. She looked at Daewon. Hold them off. I'll get the defense grid online. She ran from the war room, ignoring the protests. Outside, the city was in chaos. Civilians fled toward shelters while military vehicles raced toward defensive positions. The sky was a nightmare of impossible colors as entities tore through reality itself. A transport took her to the old palace. The building was ancient, predating even her birth. She descended into the archives, following half-remembered paths from her childhood. The defense grid control room was exactly where she remembered, a circular chamber filled with technology that looked primitive compared to modern systems but was elegantly effective. She placed her hand on the authorization panel. It scanned her genetic signature, confirmed her royal bloodline, and activated. Holographic displays lit up around her, showing the entire planetary defense network. The ancient systems were coming online after thousands of years of dormancy. Come on, she whispered, working the controls. Just a little more. Power hummed through the building. Outside, across the entire planet, ancient defense satellites activated. Energy shields that had been designed to protect against invasions long ago now turned their power against entities from another dimension. The shields held. The ancient Velian technology, built on principles of quantum entanglement similar to the memory seals, was naturally resistant to dimensional intrusion. The entities recoiled from the barriers, confused by technology they couldn't adapt to. Princess Lyra, you did it! Jae-hee's voice came through the communication system. The defense grid is buying us time. Entities are being pushed back. Lyra allowed herself a moment of relief. Then she heard something behind her. She turned slowly. An entity had somehow made it through the shields. It stood in the doorway of the control room, its form shifting and impossible to focus on. Reality warped around it, making the air itself seem to crack. Lyra backed away, her hand reaching for the emergency communicator on her belt. But the entity moved faster than thought. It reached out and stopped. The entity held perfectly still. Then, slowly, it changed. The impossible angles softened. The wrong colors normalized. For just a moment, Lyra could see something within it. Not a monster, a being, a person. It was afraid. The entity made a sound that might have been words in a language reality couldn't properly transmit. Then it pointed at the defense grid controls, at the displays showing the sanctuary generator designs that Bo-Ra had left open on the system. It understood. The entity understood what they were trying to do. Slowly, carefully, Lyra held up her hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "We're trying to help," she said, knowing it probably couldn't understand her words but hoping her intention came through. "The sanctuary. It's for you. For all of you." The entity moved closer. Reality bent around it, making Lyra's head hurt. But she stood her ground. The entity reached out again, and this time its touch was gentle, almost questioning. Lyra felt something in her mind. Not words, but feelings, fear, desperation, hope. The entity showed her images. Not visual exactly, but impressions. A dimension collapsing. Billions of beings fleeing. Terror of extinction. "I understand," Lyra whispered. "You're refugees. You don't want to hurt us, you just want to survive." The entity seemed to sag with relief. Then it turned and flowed back through the walls, disappearing. Lyra stood alone in the control room, shaking. She activated her communicator. "Dr. Bo-Ra, I need you to know something. The entities, they're aware. Intelligent. They know we're trying to build the sanctuary. I think they're willing to help." "Help how?" Bo-Ra's voice crackled through static. "I don't know yet. But we need to find a way to communicate with them. They're not monsters. They're people. Just like us." Back in the war room, this information changed everything. Day-Wan immediately ordered a ceasefire, or rather, a shift to defensive postures only. "If they're intelligent, we can negotiate. Commander Sang-Woo, hold off on the generator deployment. We need to establish communication first." "How do we communicate with beings from another dimension?" Ambassador Ha-Rin asked. "The same way we always have," Lyra said as she returned to the war room. "With mathematics, with symbols, with the universal language of wanting to survive." She looked at Bo-Ra. "The sanctuary generators, can we show them the plans? Let them see what we're trying to buy. 53 years had passed since the sanctuary opened." Captain Day-One, now Admiral Day-One, though he preferred people just call him Day-One, stood on the observation deck of Valon Station. He was old now, 98 years by his count, though human augmentation technology kept him relatively healthy. His hair was white, his face lined with decades of leadership and decisions. But his eyes were still sharp as he watched the dimensional monitoring equipment. Today was the day. After 53 years of careful work, Dr. Bo-Ra's team had finally stabilized the sanctuary enough to attempt retrieving the anchors. Lyra and Taehyun could come back. "Nervous?" a voice asked beside him. Day-Wan turned to see Dr. Bo-Ra. She had aged too, now in her late 70s, but her mind remained brilliant. She had spent the past 5 decades refining the anchor relief technology, developing the rotation system, and preparing for this moment. "Terrified," Day-One admitted. "What if it doesn't work? What if we can't bring them back?" "It will work," Bo-Ra said confidently. "We've tested it thousands of times on smaller dimensional constructs. The mathematics is sound. Mathematics doesn't account for what 50 years of dimensional existence does to consciousness." "No," Bo-Ra agreed, "but we're about to find out." The relief chamber was the culmination of decades of research. It was built on principles from 3 different sciences: human dimensional physics, Velian consciousness technology, and mathematical frameworks provided by the entities themselves. Yes, provided by the entities. The beings in the sanctuary had become partners, friends even, over the decades. They had names now. Or at least sounds that approximated names in ways reality could handle. One entity named Kresh had become particularly helpful, serving as a liaison between dimensions. Kresh was present now, its form held stable by special containment fields, waiting to help guide the anchors home. Ambassador Harin, now elderly but still serving the Galactic Council, stood with Daewon and Bo-Ra. "The Council has approved the relief rotation," she said. 16 volunteers from 8 different species will take over anchor duties in shifts. No one will have to serve more than 5 years at a time. Lyra and Taehyun made this possible, Daewon said quietly. They showed everyone that sacrifice doesn't have to be permanent. That hope is real. The relief process was complicated. It required bringing Lyra and Taehyun's consciousness back into physical form, while simultaneously installing the new anchor volunteers. The timing had to be perfect. Too slow, and the sanctuary would destabilize. Too fast, and the returning consciousness might not properly reintegrate with their bodies. Their bodies had been kept in stasis for 53 years. Preserved perfectly, waiting for the minds that had left them behind. "Beginning the process," Bo-Ra announced. "All stations report ready." Daewon held his breath as the dimensional mathematics began to flow. He could see it on the monitors, consciousness being carefully extracted from the quantum field that made up the sanctuary boundary. Simultaneously, the volunteer anchors were being integrated into the dimensional structure. It took 6 hours. 6 hours of careful manipulation of forces that most beings couldn't even perceive. Finally, Bo-Ra said, "Consciousness transfer complete. Reintegration beginning." In the medical chambers, 2 bodies began to stir. Lyra opened her eyes first. Then Taehyun. They looked around, confused, as if waking from a strange dream. "Welcome back," Bo-Ra said softly. Lyra tried to speak, but her voice didn't work properly at first. Physical form felt strange after so long without it. She looked down at her hands, flexed her fingers, marveling at the simple act of touching. Beside her, Taehyun was doing the same. Then they looked at each other. Really looked at each other. Not as quantum presences, but as physical beings. "You're here," Lyra whispered. "You're actually here." "So are you," Taehyun replied. His voice was rough from disuse. They reached for each other, and this time their hands actually met. Physical touch after 50 years of existing only as consciousness. Taehyun pulled Lyra close, and she buried her face in his shoulder. Both of them were crying. "How long?" Lyra asked. "How long were we gone?" 53 years, Bo-Ra said. "A bit longer than we hoped, but the sanctuary needed the extra stabilization time." 53 years. Lyra processed this. It had felt like no time at all in some ways, like centuries in others. The dimensional space had no proper time, only purpose and presence. "The sanctuary?" Taehyun asked. "Is it stable?" "More than stable," Bo-Ra assured him. "Thriving. The entities have built an entire civilization in there. And they helped us develop the anchor rotation system. You're heroes to them." Recovery took weeks. Lyra and Taehyun had to relearn physical existence. Walking, eating, sleeping, all the things that biological beings took for granted. But they had each other, and that made everything easier. Daewon visited them daily during recovery. He brought news of the galaxy, told them about the 53 years they had missed, how the Galactic Council had expanded, how new species had joined, how humanity had fully integrated into galactic society. "You did it," Daewon told them one afternoon. "You saved everyone, and you showed us how to work together. Human, Velian entity, we're all partners now." "I just wanted to survive," Lyra said. "We all did." "Survival was just the beginning," Daewon replied. "You gave us something more. You gave us unity." On the day of their official release from medical care, a ceremony was planned. The Galactic Council wanted to honor them, to give them medals to celebrate their sacrifice. But Lyra and Taehyun declined the public event. They requested something simpler. They stood on a balcony of the old Velian palace, the same balcony from Lyra's memories. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling in the evening. Above, stars filled the sky. "This is where we used to stand," Lyra said. "Before the Exodus. We would watch stars and talk about the future." "I never thought we'd actually get here again," Taehyun admitted. "I hoped, but I didn't truly believe. And yet here we are." Daewon and Bo-Ra joined them on the balcony, giving them space but wanting to share the moment. "What will you do now?" Bo-Ra asked. "The council has offered you positions. Research, advisory roles, anything you want." "I don't know yet," Lyra said. "For 53 years I had one purpose, maintain the sanctuary. Now I can choose. It's terrifying and wonderful. I know the feeling, Taehyun said. I spent 400 years in the pocket dimension working toward one goal. Then 50 years as an anchor. Now suddenly I can just be. You could teach, Daewon suggested. Share what you learned. Both of you have knowledge that no university could provide. Maybe, Lyra said. Eventually. But first, she looked at Taehyun. First, we need to figure out who we are together. Not as sacrifice, not as duty, just as ourselves. We never really got that chance before, Taehyun agreed. 3 months before the Exodus. That was all we had. Then let's not waste time now, Lyra said. She took his hand. Let's have a normal life. Whatever that means. They left the palace that night and found a small apartment in the city. Nothing fancy, just a place that was theirs. Over the following months, they did perfectly ordinary things. They went to markets. They walked through parks. They attended concerts and lectures. They argued about small things, laughed at silly things, and slowly built a life together. Sometimes people recognized them. The princess and the scientist who had saved the galaxy. But mostly people just saw two beings in love, finally getting to be together. Daewon visited one day with news. I'm retiring, he announced. After 70 years of military service, I think I've earned some rest. You've earned it 10 times over, Taehyun said. What will you do? Travel, maybe. Right, there's someone I've been spending time with. Another officer. We're thinking of settling down, seeing what retirement looks like together. That's wonderful, Lyra said warmly. Is it anyone we know? Engineer Minseo, from the original Sanctuary construction team. She's brilliant, funny, and patient enough to deal with me. Sounds perfect, Taehyun said with a smile. Bora also visited regularly, bringing updates on the sanctuary. The anchor rotation system was working perfectly. Volunteers from every species took turns maintaining the dimensional boundary. Some served for months, others for years, but no one was trapped anymore. The entities want to meet you, Bora said one day. Properly meet you. They've been asking about the anchors who gave them a home. So Lyra and Taehyun went to the dimensional interface stations where humans and entities could interact safely. Kresh was there, along with dozens of other entities. Through translation devices and mathematical language, they communicated. You saved us, Kresh said through the translator. Gave us home when home was lost. We will remember, always. You helped us too, Lyra replied. You taught us that different doesn't mean enemy. That survival is something we can share. Share, yes, Kresh agreed. Different beings, same hope. Same need for home, for safety, for future. The entities had a gift for them. A crystal formed from solidified dimensional energy. Something that shouldn't exist in normal space but did anyway. It glowed with impossible colors and was warm to the touch. Part of Sanctuary, Kresh explained. Part of you. You are always part of us. We are part of you. Connected. Lyra held the crystal and felt the truth of those words. She and Taehyun had been part of the Sancta.